Vizio has been a value king for years, with the M-Series sort of being the value leader in its lineup. But in a race that now includes TCL and Hisense, is the M-Series still in the lead? Welcome back, everyone. I'm Caleb Dennison, and yes, today we are finally going to review the Vizio M-Series, specifically the M7. There's also an M8 variant, but I'll get back to that in a little bit. Now, many of you in the comments section have noticed that it's been quite some time since we did the unboxing for this television. Sorry, it's taken a little while to get to this review. The first unit that we got, I think, got a little banged up in shipping. Definitely wasn't performing right. This one is, so there's good news there. We got to explore how this TV is going to rank against its competition. We could be looking at the TCL 5 series or 6 series, or maybe the Hisense H8G. It's definitely in the same price class, but how's its performance? Let's find out. Before we get to it though, y'all in the comment section, leave me a comment right now and let me know if you're excited about what's coming out at CES 2021 for TVs. I can tell you right now, there's some pretty amazing stuff. Also, while you're here, like and hit that subscribe button because you're definitely gonna wanna see the new TV coverage that's coming out of the show. All right, let's go. Let's start out with design real quick. It's very simple. Matte black bezel, not particularly thick except for the bottom border. There's also no sort of cable management for this TV, so keep that in mind. You're gonna have to take care of that yourself. Otherwise, it's fine. It's certainly not an unattractive TV, which we do see at this price point sometimes. Next, let's talk about the remote, which is simple, but that's totally fine by me. I never found myself wishing I had more buttons. In fact, I really enjoy having the input button right on here, as well as a menu button that takes me straight to the picture settings so that I don't have to go through the menu on screen. It's been really handy while I've been working with this TV. But I gotta say, I'm really attached to voice remotes these days, and unfortunately, Vizio doesn't offer that in any of its lineup. There is a way that you can connect a smart speaker to the TV, but it's really not the same as being able to press a button on the remote and basically speak what you want to find. The rest of the user experience basically comes down to Vizio's Smartcast system, which, as I've said before, has seen some big improvements lately. I really do appreciate the fact that it's Chromecast enabled, it's got Apple HomeKit and AirPlay 2 support, so there's a lot of wireless connectivity there. But I gotta say, I definitely miss HBO Max and Sling TV not being on this particular television. Now, there are workarounds. You can use Chromecast or AirPlay 2, as I mentioned, but I like having the apps on the TV for the best possible experience. Now, they may come in the future, but no, for now, they're not there. Now we need to talk about audio quality for a second, which, as you might expect, is not especially great, but I was actually surprised at how little bass this TV offers. There's basically no low end. So unless you're just watching the news, I would highly recommend you get even Vizio's most basic soundbar to accentuate the sound. One pro tip, however, if you are gonna use the TV speakers, go into the audio settings and turn off the virtual surround sound. It makes a huge difference. Now let's talk about everybody's favorite part, and that would be the picture quality. This TV does support HDR10 and Dolby Vision, so it needs to get to a certain brightness level, and it does. It gets up to about 600 nits for those peak specular highlights. When I measured it using a 10% window using Calman and a SpectraCal C6 meter, it came in around 430 nits on average, but when it's just handling those highlights, it can really pull them off. Next, I want to talk about stuff like the black levels, the shadow detail, and blooming around bright objects on a black background. But first, let me explain. This is the M7, which has significantly fewer dimming zones and less peak brightness than the M8 series, which is only available through one retailer. So I didn't expect it to perform especially well there, but it's actually surprising me. Now, you're gonna run into some pitfalls, like when you have subtitles in a letterbox bar down at the bottom of the screen. You're going to see the blooming around that because there really aren't that many dimming zones in this TV. But when I'm watching real-world content, I'm not seeing that play out as being a problem. We have a few test clips here that have very bright objects against stark black backgrounds, and I didn't notice a bunch of blooming when I was watching TV. So overall, I gotta say, I'm kind of impressed by how well this TV is doing with so few local dimming zones. Now we get to color. Let's have a conversation about this for a second. With the P-Series Quantum X, I noticed that there was sort of a pinkish magenta hue to the whites. If you had a bunch of clouds, you could definitely see it. When I measured it, sure enough, there was way too much red in the mix. I pulled it back and things got better, but that's the kind of work that a calibrator normally does and isn't easily accessible to most folks, which has me a little concerned. The bad news is that the M-Series does the same thing, but the good news is it doesn't do it to the same degree. Probably because it doesn't get quite as bright. I think you're going to do fine with the out-of-box color in the calibrated dark or the calibrated mode. I definitely like the full array local dimming setting to be about medium in either case, but once the thing is adjusted, it's amazing just how much color coverage it has, and because it's got quantum dots inside, it's doing a good job with color brightness as well. Now let's talk about processing. I gotta say, Vizio has come a long way with its processing, and this TV is definitely a good example of that. I mentioned the Hisense H8G earlier because it's kind of in the same ballpark in terms of price, and the Vizio M-Series is definitely outperforming it in the processing zone. I noticed that there's a little bit of stutter going on, like I saw in the P-Series Quantum X. You can see that in this scene where the buildings are going from the top of the screen down, but there's no moire effect, which is actually very impressive for a TV of this price. Motion in general is actually pretty good with this TV. 24 frame per second content looks just fine. There's a little bit of stutter and judder on slow pans when you've got a lot of detail. There's a little bit of a flashing or strobing effect, but all in all, I'm impressed considering it's a 60 Hz native panel. On the topic of it having a 60 Hz panel, let's talk about how gaming friendly this TV is. To be clear, it doesn't support all of the fancy new features, but it does have an eARC port. It does support auto low latency mode, so it's going to go straight into gaming mode, or Vizio's gaming engine, if you will. And it also supports variable refresh rate, which is amazing for a TV at this price. Now, it's going to top out at about 4K 60 Hz resolution, obviously because of the 60 Hz panel, but I still think that's a really great gaming experience, especially with the variable refresh rate. As for picture quality with gaming, it's actually quite good. The shadow detail is respectable, and the HDR presentation also very respectable. Not as good as we've seen with much more expensive TVs, but then again, they're more expensive TVs. On that note, I think it's really important to put the Vizio M-Series into perspective here. We spent the last couple of months reviewing some very expensive TVs, some very high performance TVs. So it's easy to have our perspective skewed a little bit. But again, I want to go back to some comparisons to TVs that are in relatively the same price range. I kind of want to compare this TV to the TCL 6 series, but the TCL 6 series is actually more expensive, and as a result, it performs a little bit better. This TV is priced more like the TCL 5 series, but I think it performs better than the TCL 5 series. And as for the Hisense H8G, I'd take the Vizio M-Series over that TV pretty much any day, even though the Hisense is quite a bit brighter. So here's where I'm at with the Vizio M-Series. It offers pretty tremendous value indeed. It pulls off this interesting balancing act where you get next-gen features along with premium picture quality, all under $700 for a 65-inch TV. That's pretty great. Thanks as always for watching, everyone. Very much appreciate your viewership. Don't forget, leave that comment down below, like, subscribe, and here's 2 other videos that I think you'll like.